Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Modern Mythmaker. I'm your host, Aaron Nichols, and today's post is called Stop Performing Pain. This is an idea that I was introduced to by the book East of Eden by John Steinbeck when I read it in 2019 and I was traveling in Southeast Asia. And it's something that I don't see talked about a lot, but I think is wildly important. And it is the idea of performative pain, which is what a lot of people who are stuck in a victim mindset are going through. Their pain is a performance, and it becomes a key part of their identity, and they act it out over and over and over again, and they don't know how to let it go because it's become such a core part of who they are. There's a couple quotes that I wanted to start with for today's post. They are written in today's email on Substack as well, if you want to take a look. The first is, "You will come to know things that can only be known with the wisdom of age and the grace of years. Most of those things will have to do with forgiveness." Cheryl Strayed. We then have "Forgiveness is the release of all hope for a better past" by Wakefield. And "Bitterness is always a failure of imagination." And that's one of mine. I'm very happy to take credit for it. But the big idea today is you don't actually realize how much the pain you carry holds you back until you actually let it go. And the only way to let it go is to forgive, which you can't do if your pain becomes a performance. If your pain becomes a core piece of your identity, forgiveness cannot happen. I grew up religious, and I left the church when I was in my late teens. And in my early 20s, I discovered angry atheism. I read Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion, and like Dawkins himself, just became absolutely insufferable and spent a bunch of time trying to convince religious people that they were wrong about things. A lot of people who grew up evangelical speak about their religious trauma. I became one of them and repeated that language ad nauseum, convinced that the church had done me irreparable harm. And many people got plenty of pain from the church, don't get me wrong. There was a lot of really awful stuff that went on, like sexual repression disguised as purity culture, telling kids that they were like chewed gum or tape that had lost its stick if they had sex before marriage, that they were never going to be loved or be capable of love if they lost their virginity before marriage. There was abuse disguised as structure, which I saw in a lot of households of people I grew up with, where mentally ill, controlling parents would use religion as an excuse to enforce unreasonable control over their families, basically just beating their kids in the mouth with a Bible. There was the requirement to evangelize, which was, telling all your friends who weren't in the church that they needed to be saved from hell and just asking to be bullied, essentially. And then there was suppression of critical thinking, all and on and on and on. And I don't want to get into specifics about the not okay things that happened to me because, again, this is about forgiveness. But for years, I carried pain and couldn't let it go because at the end of the day, I didn't want to. I got attention from having this big, tragic story I could tell about my upbringing, and so I based so much of my identity on it. I carried anger at my parents and at the church and at pastors, and it feels silly now knowing that that religion is what brought my parents together, and that they believed they were doing the right things and that they loved us. But it's true, I couldn't let it go. And for years, when I told my story, my religious upbringing was always at the core of it, how it had hurt me, how I was traveling to heal from it. And if you tell any narrative enough times, it will become a key piece of your identity. My pain became an important part of my story, but it was a performance. Trauma-based storytelling is the bedrock of a victimhood mindset. It's impossible to live a good life if you believe you're a victim. As someone who's on the other side of it, I can tell you that forgiveness is the only way out of it, because any other path means giving people control over your life who don't even know that they did you wrong. Online and in person, I see people who have been hurt desperately trying to convince others that the fact they've been hurt means they'll never be okay again. And I was in that boat. And if this is you, here's what I wish someone had told me. What happened to you was not okay. And if you let your pain and trauma become a core piece of your identity, rather than forgiving what was done to you, you are actively engaging in self-harm. Forgiveness doesn't mean that your abusers get away with it. Forgiveness means that you get to live well despite whatever happened to you. The quote that made me think about performative pain from John Steinbeck is this: "Do you take pride in your hurt? Does it make you seem large and tragic? Well, think about it. Maybe you're playing a part on a great stage with only yourself as audience." And that's from East of Eden. Pain is very real in the moment. As soon as a traumatic event happens, we feel pain. This is normal and healthy. Anger at those who hurt us is normal and healthy. But there comes a point where you have to move on with or without justice or apology from those who hurt you. I know it's scary because it can feel like leaving a part of yourself behind, but I promise you, it is the best work you'll ever do. Thank you for tuning in today. This has been The Modern Mythmaker. If you're watching on Substack, it would mean the world if you could just send this off to someone else. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, please take a second to leave us a review. It is the only thing that helps something like this grow. So thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking to you next week.